if a person doesn't have any money, that's why we say real estate, right? That's the first point, because if you have nothing, you can never grow, right? So return on equity is based on assets that owned that are then making money for you. So we really start with real estate just because most people don't have enough money, right? The people who need it the most have nothing. But real estate, the asset class, can be leveraged. You can borrow what everybody calls OPM, right? Other people's money. So return on equity is the play of that. It's that next level, and nobody really talks about it. They call this thing the BRRRR strategy. Everybody's burring. It's really cold outside. They buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat.
All right. Today we have Gualter Amarelo, my co-host of the Abundance Mindset show from Thursdays. And Gualter is amazing. He's the CEO of the Alchemist Nation, and he has put together so many great things for 100 Millionaires, summit that I also speak at and so forth. So today Gualter is going to talk about return on equity. Please go ahead, Gualter.
Good morning, Vinney. Good morning, Vo. It's actually really nice to meet you in person or virtually. Vinney has talked so much about the Vinney and Bo show, so it's really cool to be here.
Excellent. So tell us, what I know you're in real estate, and return on equity is so important for any investor, active and passive. Can I explain the whole theory behind it?
Yeah, so first, before we go into return on equity, we have to think about why do we even invest? Why do we make money? What is the whole point of all of this? And if we are looking to make money because of financial freedom, legacy wealth, or the idea of quitting our jobs, things that we hate, then we should be looking at things like velocity of money, right? How do we do it faster? How do we move our capital that we do have, whatever little capital we do have, how do we move it faster and quicker? And then how do we get access to capital that we don't have, right? So that we can eventually move it into that puddle that becomes a big river and then becomes a giant ocean of abundance of money that comes into us. And so if a person doesn't have any money, that's why we say real estate, right? That's the first point, because if you have nothing, you can never grow, right? So return on equity is based on assets that owned that are then making money for you. So we really start with real estate just because most people don't have enough money, right? The people who need it the most have nothing. But real estate, the asset class, can be leveraged. You can borrow what everybody calls OPM, right? Other people's money. So return on equity is the play of that. It's that next level, and nobody really talks about it. They call this thing the BRRRR strategy. Everybody's burring. It's really cold outside. They buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat is the strategy. But underneath it, the underpinning factor is actually return on equity. That's why it works. And what they're actually doing is not just burring. What they're actually doing is something called pyramiding. If done properly in this market. In the past, we would burr, but now with interest rates so high, it no longer makes as much sense. So now you're selling things, you're doing the 1031 exchange more often, which is where the pyramiding strategy actually comes in. The underpinning fundamentals behind it are this return on equity, which we don't talk enough about real estate in the real estate space. We actually talk about it more in the business space, right? Return on equity is always looked at from a business standpoint, from a equities standpoint, from the stock market. But in the real estate space, most guys are just getting into it for cash flow. But really what makes a millionaire, what makes somebody financially free, is how much equity is actually working for them. Right? We talk about COC, right? Cash on cash return. That's I put my money in and I get a return on investment on that money. We talk about ROI, right? My return on investment. Again, money I put in that I get an internal rate of return that's in taxes, depreciation, I'm getting it back. But what ROE actually is a function that goes up in the beginning, but then drops down over time, whereas COC and ROI actually can go up and increase over time. The ROE actually drops lower and lower every single year that you own it, assuming you're in an appreciation market or you're amortizing your loan. So that's really, to me, the magic of velocity of money. If you can actually start looking at that ROE, you start being able to expand your net worth a lot faster, and people can retire in 3 to 5 years if they're looking at this factor. If they're not, it takes that traditional 10 years, 20 years that financial planners talk about. So that's kind of in a nutshell what it is. We'll dive into
this. This is interesting. This is so interesting. I mean, we say cap rates, within they're higher. The property value is higher also, right? Oh, lower. It's the inverse. Now you're saying ROE, that's return on equity. As the equity goes up and the returns are constant, then its number going down, which is very similar to cap rate. We should actually be going lower the cap rate. The value of the property is increasing. If we have to do it analogy like that, maybe your net worth, your whole, financial independence is ROE going down. This is very interesting. Dig into that a little bit more. This is very, very exciting to me because what you're saying is you're not increasing the cash flow, which is spendable money in a year, but the equity portion in the investment is increasing by loan pay down, by renters paying the mortgage and everything like that. And as the value increases and the loan is the same, the equity increases. So now your return on equity should be decreasing. Say that again. This is very
All
good
right.
concept.
So I know this is a complex process. So before we dive into the formula itself, which I'll very quickly say, the formula is cash flow
Mhm.
over the actual equity. So it's cash flow divided by
Yeah.
equity equals ROE. But to explain that, we can go that into a little bit later. But right now, for the person who's listening and saying, like, look, I know ROE is now important because this bald guy says it is, and then our billionaire friend Vinney says it is, so it must be important for me to understand, but I don't understand it. I'll give an example. The first time I acknowledged ROE was the first time I bought a house back in 2008. I was 22 years old, and I didn't know anything,
Mhm.
but I did know one thing. I watched HGTV, and the guys who flipped houses made a lot of money. So I knew that I should buy a house to flip it, not just to live in it. So I did what's called a live-in flip. Right? I house hacked, and I lived in my girlfriend at the time. And I knew that if I just renovated everything, remember, this is 2008. So like, I'm like, if I
Yeah.
renovate everything, there's a good chance I can beat this market that just keeps going down, right? In the stock market, we say, don't catch a falling knife, right? If you see things going down, don't try to catch the market and buy it here because it could just keep going. And 2008,
Yeah.
it did keep going. The house value kept going down. I put $10,000 into it. My house value kept going down. I put another $10,000 into it. New roof, new floors, new everything. And the house value kept going down until 2012. In 2012, I
Mhm.
finally sold it. I had put $34,000 into it. Here's what's interesting. When I sold it, I took the $34,000 back. That was my profit. Right? I bought it for 170 and I put 34,000 into it. I sold it for 205. So it was just like my first real estate investment was a
Yeah.
break even. I just got my money back, right?
Mhm.
Thankful,
Mhm.
because I did buy in '08. But what I did from that point forward, this is where return on equity started to manifest in my life, but I wasn't clearly aware of it. I didn't know what I was doing. It just started manifesting, right? I had now 34,000. I took 10,000 to move into a 3-family. I owner occupied a 3-family with a $10,000 down payment. So it was an FHA loan. They gave me some of the money went to closing costs. I paid my own closing costs. Wasn't a really great real estate investor. I was just a 26-year-old kid who thought he was, taking over the world. And then I had another 28,000 because I'd saved 10 grand myself. I'd saved 14 grand myself. And I took 28,000 to buy a 2-family next door. So now I had turned money that I'd been saving and return on equity, like money that had become equity. I took that and I rolled it into 2 properties, 5 units total, right? A single family that I was living in, paying a $1,400 mortgage, now became 5 units, one of which I was living in, but I was now getting paid $1,000, right? So these other 4 units were paying me cash flow of like over my mortgages, over my taxes, $1,000. But what was really interesting was I bought the 3-family for 157, and I later sold it for 257. And I bought the 2-family for 109. I later sold it for 240. So I actually had increased my equity by over $200,000 simply by shifting it from a single family house into 2 separate assets. And that's where pyramiding, which is the sale of one property to buy 2 properties, and return on equity start showing me this velocity of money. I start realizing, oh man, like that just made, cause I made 40,000 a year at the time. It's very embarrassing to say this, but that was my income. Right? I only ever knew how to make 40,000 a year. So in one transition from the sale of one property into these other properties, by buying properly, I suddenly had made 5 times what I would make in a year just in equity. And I paid no taxes because it's, again, an equity.
Yeah. And also, I think a big takeaway here, when you did that house hack, it was a triplex, right?
It was a single family, the first one.
No, the second one you moved into.
The second one was, yes, the second house hack was a triplex.
Okay, so my point on this was you lived in one, you rented the other 2 out, you paid your mortgage, and you had 1,000 or 1,500 extra. So now your cash flow difference, let's just say you were spending $1,700 a month on the other single family house. So your difference in, like available capital is like $2,700. You're living, right? Now you just, right? So I think the big point here is like, it doesn't take much. You need to take baby steps in the beginning, usually.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
even if you have 15 grand in your name, go get a 2 or 3 family, live in it, get an FHA loan, do exactly what Gualter was just saying. Like, look, this is the fastest way to make your first move. And like, if you're sitting there right now and like, you know, you want to crush 2024, or maybe you're an advanced investor, you can still use the same strategies. But if this is your first, if you're paying rent and you want to break free of, you know, the financial shackles, why wouldn't you go and do a house hack strategy? I mean, it's like kind of a no-brainer. Use FHA. You only come up with 3.5% down, right? You can get it gifted to you. You get the seller to cover closing costs. Move in for next to nothing. Now, instead of spending $1,600 or $2,000 on rent, you live for free. Plus, you get an extra $1,500 a month in positive cash flow. So your net difference is $3,000 and $2,500 a month. You take that $2,500 a month. You stack that over and over again. You can put it into, you know, whatever you want to put it into.
Totally.
Like then you go out and then you live there and then you move out and then you occupy that. Maybe you do a cash out refinance at a lower rate. Now your payment's the same, but you pulled out 50 grand. You go buy a duplex, fourplex. Then you start stacking and you 1031 exchange into like 20 unit apartments, 50 unit apartments. Then you go, hey, this is great. I have experience. Now I'm going to do what Vinney does. I'm going to go become a professional syndicator. Then I'm going to raise money. And then now I buy 300 unit buildings.
This is amazing. This is totally amazing. You know, one of the things I wanted to mention that HGTV star Bo actually did that show for 1.5 years. He's a movie star in the HGTV, flipping the whole, right?
Gualter didn't know that, but actually Gualter used to, he used to watch the show. It's called Flip It to Win It.
Yeah.
We did.
That's right.
So fabulous. Thank you, Gualter. Appreciate that, brother.